beneath the quiet fields of Illinois, hidden under layers of soil and centuries of silence, lies a story that refuses to be forgotten. Imagine standing in the middle of a flat, wind-swept prairie, the grass bending like waves, the horizon stretching endlessly. It feels ordinary, even peaceful. But somewhere below your feet, entire cities once pulsed with life, markets buzzed with trade, fires blazed in ceremonial plazas, and astronomers tracked the heavens with a precision that rivals NASA's modern instruments. Sit back, take a breath, and let your imagination drift, because this is where our journey begins into a world that science still struggles to explain. Tonight, we're venturing into Illinois' most enduring mysteries, a land where Earth itself has been shaped by human hands into pyramids of soil taller than most buildings, where wooden circles aligned with the sun-marked moments when day and night stood perfectly balanced, and where massive stone walls snake across ridges for reasons no one can agree on. This is not just history, this is a puzzle, a haunting echo of civilizations that rose, thrived, and then vanished, leaving behind only questions. Who were these people who built such wonders with no metal tools, no written language, no wheels? How did they organize thousands of workers to move millions of cubic feet of earth with nothing but baskets and human determination? And why, after building cities that would have dwarfed London at the time, did they walk away, leaving their homes to fall silent? Some believe climate change forced them out. Others suggest war, famine, or disease. Still others whisper about something stranger: spiritual upheaval, societal collapse, or a knowledge too dangerous to preserve. The answers, if they exist, are buried deep under the Illinois soil. And as we begin to unearth these stories, one thing becomes clear. This land has never truly been empty. Every hill, every mound, every strange circle of stones is a message left for us, a reminder that history is not as simple as the textbooks claim. So, let's step onto this ancient stage together and follow the trail into a forgotten world. Because the first mystery waiting for us is unlike anything most people ever learn about in school. The lost metropolis of Cahokia is not just a ruin, it is a revelation. A city so massive and complex that it rewrites what we thought we knew about pre-Columbian America. Picture yourself standing on the edge of a vast plain, gazing at a towering earthen pyramid called Monk's Mound, nearly 100 feet high and covering more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Around it stretches a city that once held as many as 40,000 people, farmers, traders, artisans, leaders, making it larger than London in the year 1000 AD. The air would have been filled with smoke from cooking fires, the sound of drums, the chatter of marketplaces, the steady rhythm of feet carrying baskets of corn, wood, and clay. Cahokia was not a scattered collection of huts, it was a planned urban center with neighborhoods, ceremonial plazas, and a social hierarchy that seems to hint at kings, priests, and laborers. Yet we know so little about the people who lived here because they left no written records. Archaeologists have found clues, tools made of chert, beads of copper, carvings that suggest a complex spiritual world, and massive pits filled with discarded shells and bones. Some pits hint at feasting, others at something darker, evidence of human sacrifice. Bodies arranged with care as if to appease the gods. And then there is the mystery of how they fed so many mouths. Some researchers believe Cahokia's farmers mastered maize agriculture to a degree unmatched in the region, using raised fields and irrigation channels that are still faintly visible from the air today. Others think trade routes stretched for hundreds of miles, bringing in goods and perhaps even people from across the continent. But Cahokia's most haunting mystery is its end. Around the year 1350, this thriving metropolis collapsed. The plazas emptied, the mounds were abandoned, and the city fell silent. Was it drought that drove them away? Was it conflict between rival factions? Or was there something about the site itself that made it impossible to stay? Whatever happened, the people of Cahokia left behind one of the greatest unsolved enigmas in American history. And just when you think you have seen it all, you realize Cahokia holds yet another secreter, strange circle of posts that may have turned this city into a kind of prehistoric observatory. That is where we go next, into the wooden shadow of a place archaeologists call Woodhenge. At first glance, Woodhenge looks simple, just a circle of evenly spaced wooden posts standing in a field. But this was no ordinary fence or corral. This was a calendar, a celestial machine built not with gears or glass, but with trees and intuition. A place where priests or astronomers could track the heavens with astonishing accuracy. Imagine standing in the center of the circle on a cold morning as the first light of dawn breaks over the prairie. The sun rises exactly between two posts, signaling the spring equinox, the moment when day and night are perfectly balanced. Move through the seasons and you'd watch the sun's path shift along the horizon, lining up with different posts on solstices and other key dates, marking the times for planting, harvest, and sacred ceremonies. Some researchers believe Woodhenge was a place of celebration, where entire crowds might gather to watch the turning of the seasons, to dance and sing as the sun confirmed its eternal cycle. Others think it was a place of power, a tool used by leaders to control the people by predicting eclipses and celestial events that seemed like magic. And there is something undeniably eerie about these posts, because we are not certain what else happened here. Some excavations have found evidence of fires, feasts, and even burials near the circle, suggesting it was more than a calendar. It was a ritual ground, a bridge between the earth and the sky. Picture the night sky as it would have looked 1,000 years ago, free from city lights, every star blazing. The people of Cahokia would have seen the Milky Way as a glowing river overhead, the moon casting long shadows through the posts, the entire circle turning into a cosmic clock ticking silently through eternity. What secrets did they whisper here? What knowledge have we lost since the last sunrise they watched as a community? The posts of Woodhenge have long since decayed and been replaced by replicas, but the mystery remains, a haunting reminder that even without telescopes, these people saw the sky as clearly as we ever have. And just beyond Cahokia's boundaries, another mystery waits for us, one built not of wood or earth, but of stone, rising like a broken crown from the ridges of southern Illinois. This is where we find the giant city's stone fort, deep in the forests of southern Illinois, where sandstone bluffs rise like the ribs of some ancient creature, lies a structure that defies easy explanation. Locals call it the Giant City Stone Fort, but it is not a fort in any traditional sense. Imagine climbing a narrow trail through thick woods until you come face to face with a wall of stacked stone stretching over 1,000 feet, winding along the edge of a bluff. The stones are heavy, weathered, and laid without mortar, each one fitted carefully into place as though someone wanted this wall to last for centuries. And yet, when you stand here, you feel no sense of battle or war. There are no signs of gates or towers, no evidence of soldiers keeping watch. Instead, this place feels eerily quiet, almost ceremonial, as if it were built for a purpose we have long since forgotten. Some archaeologists suggest it may have been a gathering place, a sacred enclosure where the community met to perform rites that needed to be hidden from the outside world. Others believe it was a defensive wall, but against what? There are no records of large-scale warfare in the region, and the wall does not fully enclose the space. It is open-ended, almost inviting you in rather than keeping you out. The location is striking, perched high with sweeping views of the forested hills, as if whoever built it wanted to be closer to the sky or the spirits they believed dwelled above. When you run your hands along the stones, you can feel the roughness, the chill, the weight of time pressing against your palm. The forest seems to hold its breath here, as if guarding whatever secret the builders left behind. And then there is the question of age. No one is certain exactly when it was built, or even by whom. Was it connected to Cahokia? Was it the work of a people even older, whose memory has faded completely from history? Standing among the stones, you get the sense that this was a place of decision. A place where something significant once happened, something that left enough of an impression for these massive stones to be stacked in silence. And just when you think you've solved it, Illinois offers another riddle. One buried deeper in the soylent ancient mound city with layers of history and death waiting to be uncovered. Next, we move to Kincaid Mounds, where the earth itself tells a darker story. Far from the traffic and noise of the modern world, hidden in the quiet farmland along the Ohio River, lies a place where the earth has been shaped into something deliberate, something haunting. Kincaid Mounds is not as tall or as famous as Cahokia, but it carries a darker weight, as if it remembers something we were never meant to know. Picture standing in an open field, the wind rippling through rows of corn, and suddenly realizing that the gentle hills around you are not natural, they are human-made, layered with soil carried basket by basket, forming platforms, plazas, and burial grounds that once held an entire community. Archaeologists have uncovered clues here: pottery fragments, tools, remains of houses, and burials, some simple, some elaborate, and some that seem almost ritualistic. There is evidence of a hierarchy, of leaders and followers, of ceremonies that may have involved sacrifice. Some of the skeletons found show signs of violent death, their bones bearing marks that raise more questions than answers. Was this a peaceful city that was attacked? Was it a place of pilgrimage where offerings were made, including human lives? Or was it part of a larger religious system where death was seen not as an ending but as a passage to something beyond? When you stand here at dusk, the field glows gold, and the mounds cast long, unnatural shadows, as if reminding you that this ground has been shaped by hands with purpose. The Ohio River nearby would have been a highway, bringing trade goods, ideas, and perhaps strangers into this settlement, making it a hub of cultural exchange, but also of tension. Some researchers believe Kincaid was one of several centers that connected into a vast network of Mississippians, culture sites stretching across the Midwest and South, each one playing a role in a mystery we are only beginning to piece together. And yet, just like Cahokia, this place too was abandoned. Its people vanished, its ceremonies ceased, and the mounds were left to grass over in silence. Standing there now, you feel the presence of those who built it, but you hear no answers, only the whisper of wind through the corn and the slow turning of the river. And if Kincaid holds the memory of death, then our next stop takes us even deeper into the unknown, to a place whose very shape hints at something cosmicer: Emerald Mound, hidden just off a quiet road near the Mississippi. River is a place that feels like stepping into another world, a place where the earth itself rises up into a shape so vast and so deliberate that it stops you in your tracks. Emerald Mound is the second largest ceremonial mound in the entire United States. A flat-topped, grass-covered platform stretching nearly 8 acres across, rising more than 30 feet high. Standing at its base, you feel small, as if you are standing at the foot of a forgotten pyramid. Climb to the top, and the land spreads out in every direction, fields, trees, and sky, all seeming to revolve around this central stage. This was no casual construction. This mound was built layer by layer over centuries, suggesting a community deeply committed to ritual, ceremony, and perhaps power. Archaeologists believe it may have supported temples, elite residences, or sacred structures now long gone. Some think it was the seat of rulers, the place where decisions that shaped the lives of thousands were made, where feasts were held, and where the most important ceremonies took place. The size alone suggests authority, coordination, and a sense of cosmic purpose. When you stand at the center of the mound, you cannot shake the feeling that this was meant to connect heaven and earth, that the builders chose this spot for reasons beyond simple convenience. The name Emerald is fitting not just for the lush greenery that covers it, but for the aura of mystery that seems to glow around it. What were they watching from this height? Did they use it to track the stars, to signal other towns, to mark the movements of the river? And why was it abandoned? As with Cahokia and Kincaid, the story ends in silence. The people left, the temples fell, and the mound became just another hill in the landscape. Today, it is so quiet you can hear the insects buzzing in the grass, the wind rustling in the trees, and perhaps, if you listen closely, the echo of voices chanting in a language no one speaks anymore. Standing on Emerald Mound at sunset feels like standing on the edge of time itself. And yet, all of these mysteries, Cahokia, Woodhenge, Giant City, Kincaid, Emerald, are not isolated stories. They are pieces of a greater puzzle, one that suggests Illinois was once part of something far more complex and connected than we imagine. And that leads us to the question at the heart of this journey. Why did they all disappear? Somewhere between the years 1300 and 1400, the thriving heart of the Mississippi Valley went quiet. Cahokia's plazas, once alive with dancers, traders, and priests, became overgrown with weeds. The fires in the great houses of Kincaid went cold. The ceremonies at Emerald Mound ceased. Whatever force had united thousands of people across this region, whatever vision inspired them to move mountains of soil and carve their lives into the landscape, was gone. Imagine walking through those empty streets in the years after the collapse. Homes abandoned, food stores rotting, wooden structures slowly falling to ruin. You would hear only the sound of the wind, the cry of birds, maybe the distant roll of thunder. The silence must have felt heavy, almost unnatural, as though the land itself had been cursed. Historians and archaeologists have debated for decades what could have caused such a collapse. Some point to climate change evidence, shows that around this time, the region suffered from severe droughts, making it harder to grow enough corn to feed the population. Others suggest disease, perhaps brought by traders from distant lands, spreading through the dense urban centers like a shadow. There are signs of conflict too: mass graves at Cahokia, burned structures, fortifications hastily built as if war had erupted among factions or neighbors. And then there are the more mysterious theories that the people simply walked away, abandoning the city for spiritual or ideological reasons, as if something about Cahokia no longer felt safe, no longer felt sacred. Whatever the truth, this was not a slow decline, It was dramatic, almost sudden, and the region never saw anything like Cahokia again. The descendants of these people survived, spreading into smaller villages, preserving fragments of their traditions, but the great cities never returned. Standing on these sites today, you feel the weight of that disappearance. The sense that something immense was lost, not just a population, but a way of seeing the world, a way of living in harmony with the stars, the rivers, and the soil. And yet, the collapse only deepens the mystery, because the earthworks, the mounds, and the alignments remain, defying us to ignore them. They are still here, whispering that something extraordinary once happened on this land. The question is, are we listening closely enough to hear what they are trying to tell us? Our journey now turns to the clues these ancient people left behind, the symbols and artifacts that might hold the key to their vanished world. If you look closely at the mounds, the plazas, and even the arrangement of villages across Illinois, you start to see a pattern emerging, almost as if the entire landscape was turned into a message, a map, or even a prayer. Many of Cahokia's mounds are aligned with cardinal directions, as though their builders were deliberately orienting the city with the cosmos. Monk's Mound faces the rising sun at certain times of the year, and the great plazas are positioned to catch light and shadow in ways that seem intentional, like an ancient stage designed to mark the passage of time. Archaeologists have uncovered small figurines carved from stone, depicting humans, animals, and beings that look half human, half spirit. Some of these figures show dancers or shamans. Others seem to represent fertility, war, or death. Pottery fragments bear patterns that might be stories or myths, repeating symbols that suggest a shared language of meaning. Then there are the remains of the so-called Birdman tablets, small carvings that show a figure with outstretched wings, perhaps a god, a hero, or a symbol of transformation. Were these objects merely decorative, or did they carry instructions for rituals, warnings about cosmic cycles, or records of the past? Even the placement of settlements along rivers seems deliberate, as though they were following a design only they understood. Some researchers believe these alignments and symbols reflect a deep understanding of astronomy, agriculture, and spirituality, a worldview where nothing was accidental and every structure had a purpose. Others suggest that we may be reading too much into these patterns, seeing meaning where there was none. And yet, when you stand in the middle of a Cahokia plaza at dawn, when the first rays of sunlight hit the mounds in perfect alignment, it is hard to believe this was not planned. It feels like standing inside a clock, a calendar, or a ritual machine that once connected its people to the movements of the stars. These symbols and alignments are clues, but they are not answers. They leave us with more questions. What stories did these people tell about the sky? What rituals did they perform when the stars lined up just right? And why did they stop? To get closer to an answer, we must look at the people themselves, the bones, the burials, the remains that reveal how they lived and died. Beneath the surface of Illinois, in carefully dug pits and chambers, the dead of these ancient cities still speak if you know how to listen. Archaeologists have uncovered massed graves at Cahokia, where dozens of bodies were buried together, some laid with care, others hastily thrown in as though sacrificed or executed. Some skeletons show signs of trauma, broken bones, cut marks suggesting violent deaths, while others are adorned with shell beads, copper ornaments, and finely crafted tools. Evidence that they were honored, perhaps even revered. In one of the most famous discoveries, A burial known as Mound 72 contained the remains of a man believed to be a ruler or spiritual leader, surrounded by precious offerings and accompanied by the bodies of more than 50 young women, who appeared to have been sacrificed at the time of his death. Imagine the ceremony that must have taken place that day: torches burning, drums pounding, the air heavy with smoke and chanting as the city gathered to witness the passage of their leader into the spirit world. To modern eyes, it seems brutal, but to the people of Cahokia, it may have been the highest honor, a way of ensuring balance between the living and the dead, between earth and sky. Other burials are quieter, more domestic children laid to rest with small toys or tools, families buried together as if to remain united beyond death. The bones themselves reveal much about daily life, signs of malnutrition, hard labor, disease, and, surprisingly, some of the earliest evidence of organized violence in the region. This was not an idyllic paradise life. Here could be harsh, dangerous, and short. And yet the care with which many of these burials were arranged suggests a deep respect for the cycle of life and death. Some researchers believe that these burial sites were not hidden away but central to the community's identity, places where the living gathered to remember and renew their connection to the ancestors. When you stand at these mounds today, you can almost feel that connection, like standing in the presence of something sacred, something still alive in memory. But these graves also raise an uncomfortable question. Were these sacrifices voluntary, or were they demanded by leaders to maintain control? To answer that, we need to look not just at the people, but at the world they built, the tools, the houses, the defenses that tell us how they survived and what they feared. To truly understand the mystery of Illinois' ancient civilizations, we have to step into their daily lives, into the homes where they cooked, slept, and raised children, into the workshops where they shaped tools from stone, bone, and copper, into the wooden palisades where guards may have stood watch. Cahokia was not just a spiritual center, but a living, breathing city with neighborhoods, storage pits, and trash heaps that reveal what its people ate, what they traded, and even what they feared. Archaeologists have found chert tools so finely made they look almost modern: polished stone axes, fishing hooks carved from bone, and fragments of woven mats and baskets. Their houses were rectangular, made of wooden posts covered with clay and thatch, arranged in clusters around courtyards, suggesting family compounds or small communities within the larger city. The sheer number of these houses, thousands of them, speaks to the size of Cahokia's population and the level of organization required to maintain order. But Cahokia also had defenses. Around the central precinct of the city stood a massive wooden palisade, a wall of tall posts sunk deep into the ground, perhaps 12 feet high, encircling the sacred mounds and plazas. This was no simple fence, it was a barrier meant to control who entered the heart of Cahokia, to separate the leaders and priests from the common people, or perhaps to keep out enemies. Evidence of repairs and rebuilds shows that this wall was maintained for generations, hinting at ongoing threats or fears. And then there are the storage pits, some large enough to hold vast amounts of corn, suggesting that food surplus was not just a luxury but a necessity to feed thousands and to maintain power. When you imagine the city at its peak, you can almost hear the sounds of daily life, the pounding of corn into meal, the crack of stone against stone as tools were shaped, the chatter of children playing near the fire. It was a place of hard work, but also of celebration, trade, and ritual. And yet, for all this order and structure, there are signs that life here was fragile. Drought, floods, or even a single failed harvest could have sent shockwaves through this society. The palisade and the mass graves suggest that danger was never far away, which leads us to an unsettling thought. Were these cities not just centers of culture, but also centers of conflict? For a long time, historians imagined Cahokia and the surrounding mound cities as peaceful spiritual centers, places where priests watched the skies and farmers tended the fields without fear of war. But the evidence tells a different, darker story. The wooden palisades encircling Cahokia's sacred precinct were not just symbolics, they were defensive, and they were rebuilt multiple times, suggesting attacks, or at least the constant threat of them. Archaeologists have uncovered arrow points lodged in the remains of buildings, burned houses that hint at raids or uprisings, and mass graves where the victims appear to have been executed or ritually killed after violent encounters. Imagine standing on top of Monk's Mound and looking out over the city, knowing that somewhere beyond the horizon there might be rival groups gathering, preparing to strike. The tension must have been palpable, the sense that everything could be lost in a single season of conflict. Some researchers believe Cahokia's population may have grown too quickly, straining its resources and sparking internal divisions that erupted into violence. Others suggest outside enemies, perhaps rival tribes or coalitions, saw Cahokia's wealth and power as a threat and sought to bring it down. And then there are theories that frame the violence not as war but as ceremony, acts of controlled bloodshed meant to maintain cosmic balance, to keep the sun rising and the rains coming. Whatever the case, life in Cahokia was not without fear, and that fear may have been one of the forces that ultimately tore the city apart. Standing at the reconstructed palisade today, with the tall posts casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun, you can almost see the guards who once kept watch, their spears in hand, their eyes scanning the horizon. You can almost hear the distant sound of war drums or the shouting of a warning. These were not just farmers and builders, they were survivors, living on the edge of a world that could turn violent without warning. And if war played a role in Cahokia's fall, then it leaves us with a haunting question. Who were they fighting, and what became of those enemies when the city finally collapsed? To search for answers, we must widen our view and look beyond Illinois, to the vast network of cultures connected by trade, travel, and ideas, because Cahokia was not alone. Cahokia was never an isolated city. It was the beating heart of a network that stretched across the continent, connecting people and ideas from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Archaeologists have found artifacts here that could only have come from faraway places: copper from Michigan, shells from the Gulf Coast, obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, mica from Appalachia. Imagine traders paddling dugout canoes along winding rivers, their boats filled with goods, stories, and news from distant lands. These waterways were the highways of their time, carrying not just objects but influence, allowing Cahokia's beliefs, customs, and power to ripple outward like waves. Some researchers think Cahokia may have been a kind of capital city, a center of pilgrimage where people from many cultures gathered for rituals, feasts, and trade fairs. Others suggest it was more of an empire, sending emissaries or warriors to control outposts hundreds of miles away. The evidence is tantalizing. Smaller mound sites across the Midwest bear striking similarities to Cahokia's layout, as if they were satellites or colonies echoing the great city's design. This web of connections would have given Cahokia immense power, but also made it vulnerable. A drought or conflict in one region could have disrupted the entire network, cutting off trade and weakening the city's grip on its people. And there is another layer to this network that is harder to define: the spiritual layer. Many of the artifacts found shell gorgets, figurines. Ceremonial pipes bear images of gods, animals, and mythical beings that are found across Native American traditions, suggesting a shared cosmology, a system of meaning that united people over vast distances. When you hold one of these objects, you can almost feel the hands that made it, the journey it took, the ceremony it witnessed. This interconnectedness makes Cahokia's collapse even more mysterious. When the city fell, its influence disappeared almost overnight. It is as though a light went out, leaving the entire network in darkness. What happened to the outposts, the traders, the pilgrims? Did they scatter and carry Cahokia's ideas with them, or did they turn away, leaving the city to die alone? The answers might lie not just in the artifacts, but in the land itself, because the land remembers, and sometimes it speaks through layers of soil, pollen, and ash. To find out what it's saying, we turn next to the science that has been digging deeper than ever before. Beneath the surface of Cahokia and the surrounding floodplain lies a silent witness: the soil itself. Modern science has given archaeologists the ability to read the land like a book, each layer of earth revealing a chapter of the past. Core samples taken from nearby lakes and swamps have shown dramatic changes in the environment during Cahokia's rise and fall. There are layers rich with charcoal, evidence of large-scale fires that may have been set intentionally to clear land for farming or, perhaps as a result of warfare or ritual burning. There are layers where pollen suddenly shifts, showing a transition from wild plants to crops like corn, a sign that agriculture was expanding rapidly to feed the swelling population. And then there are the troubling layers where things go wrong, signs of massive flooding, drought conditions, and even soil erosion so severe it suggests the land was being overworked and exhausted. Imagine living in a city where the ground beneath your feet was literally giving way, where fields that once produced abundant harvests suddenly turned to mud or dust. This environmental record is a sobering reminder that Cahokia was not just a city but an ecosystem, and when the balance was lost, everything suffered. Some researchers believe a series of catastrophic floods in the 13th century may have devastated the surrounding farmland, making it impossible to feed tens of thousands of people. Others argue that climate change brought a prolonged drought that crippled the agricultural system. Either way, the soil tells a story of stress, decline, and eventual collapse. But it also whispers something more mysterious, because, in some layers, archaeologists have found traces of rare plants used in ceremonies, suggesting that as the crisis deepened, Cahokia's leaders turned more and more to ritual in an attempt to restore cosmic order. The soil is not just dirt. It is memory, holding the imprint of every fire, every harvest, every storm. And as scientists continue to dig, they are uncovering more than just the physical history of Cahokia. They are uncovering its emotional history, its moments of triumph and desperation. Yet even with all this data, the biggest question remains: why did everyone leave? For that, we must look at the people themselves, at the bones and burials that hold clues to what it meant to live on, die in, the shadow of Monk's Mound. If the soil holds the memory of the city, the bones hold the memory of its people. Beneath the mounds and within the burial pits lie thousands of individuals whose lives and deaths form the truest record of Cahokia's story. Archaeologists have uncovered graves that range from the simple to the spectacular, some containing a single person laid to rest with care, others filled with dozens of bodies, many of them sacrificed. One of the most haunting discoveries is the burial pit near Mound 72, where over 270 people were interred. Some were young women, their skeletons arranged neatly, their lives likely taken in ritual sacrifice. Others show signs of violent death, strangled, bludgeoned, or left in positions suggesting they were thrown in hastily. Standing at the edge of that burial, you can almost feel the weight of what happened there, the solemnity and the fear. These were not random killings. They were acts meant to communicate with the cosmos, to ensure fertility, to honor the dead leader buried nearby. But not all bones tell stories of sacrifice. Many speak of daily life, of hard labor, of disease. Analysis of their teeth shows periods of malnutrition, revealing that even in Cahokia's golden age, not everyone had enough to eat. Some skulls bear healed fractures, signs of a life that included conflict but also survival. And then there are the infants, so many of them, reminding us of the fragility of life in a world where even a small drought or disease outbreak could be deadly. Studying these bones has given scientists a glimpse of Cahokia's society, its hierarchy, its rituals, its struggles, but it has also deepened the mystery. Because around the time Cahokia began to decline, the number of burials dropped sharply, as though the population was vanishing faster than death could account for. Did they migrate away, seeking new lands? Were they wiped out by war or disease? Or did they simply dissolve into the surrounding cultures, leaving behind only their monuments as a silent testament? The bones are both answer and riddle, a map of the human experience that ends just when we need it most. To understand this vanishing act, we must look at the sky, because Cahokia was not only built on the earth, but aligned with the heavens. And it is in the stars that some believe the final clues to its fate still linger. Cahokia was not just a city built on earth, it was a city built in dialogue with the sky. Its massive mounds, plazas, and wooden circles, like Woodhenge, reveal a culture obsessed with celestial cycles, with the movements of the sun, the moon, and perhaps even the planets. Imagine standing in the center of a timber circle, the morning light filtering through the gaps between enormous red cedar posts, each one marking the sunrise at solstices and equinoxes with astonishing precision. Modern calculations confirm that the builders achieved alignments accurate to within fractions of a degree, a feat that challenges even today's surveyors. Some researchers suggest that these alignments were purely practical, guiding planting and harvesting cycles for a massive urban population. Others argue that the circles held deep spiritual significance, acting as stages for ritual ceremonies designed to harmonize human life with cosmic forces. The largest circles contained dozens of posts, each representing a celestial event, and they were rebuilt several times over centuries, becoming more refined and precise with each iteration. This implies not only extraordinary engineering skills, but also a tradition of knowledge passed down through generations without a written language, without metal tools, without telescopes, relying solely on careful observation, memory, and oral instruction. The mystery deepens when you consider how Cahokia's mounds were also aligned. Some plazas and mound axes line up perfectly with key solar events, while others seem to mark lunar or even planetary cycles, suggesting that the city itself was a giant observatory. What were they measuring, and why? Was it ritual, science, or a combination of both? Perhaps standing in the right spot on the morning of the summer solstice, the leaders of Cahokia could see patterns that gave them power over time, crops, or even people's beliefs. And yet, for all this astronomical knowledge, no written records remain to tell us their methods or motivations. Were the Skywatchers priests, scientists, or both? Did they predict famine, drought, or flood? And if so, Did those predictions fail or guide the city to safety? The heavens still hold the echoes of their observations. And as we peer at the reconstructed circles today, we can feel the same awe they must have felt. But the most unsettling question lingers. Could such celestial mastery have been one of the reasons Cahokia vanished so mysteriously, leaving only shadows of its astronomical brilliance behind? Despite centuries of building, planning, and thriving, Cahokia did not endure. By the 14th century, the city that had once housed tens of thousands was abandoned, its streets silent, its mounds empty, and its plazas deserted. Archaeologists debate the reasons, but no single explanation satisfies the evidence. Some point to environmental stress droughts that lasted decades, floods that swept fertile soil away, overworked land that could no longer sustain massive populations. Others suggest political instability, perhaps internal conflicts, power struggles, or the collapse of the elaborate trade networks that had connected Cahokia to distant regions. Disease, too, may have played a role, invisible pathogens that moved faster than human understanding could track. Imagine a city where life had once pulsed in every corner, suddenly emptied, the people gone as if swept away by a silent wind. What becomes even stranger is the absence of destruction. Unlike many abandoned cities in history, Cahokia was not burned to the ground or dismantled by invaders. Its structures were left intact, its monumental mounds standing like frozen witnesses to a vanished society. Some researchers speculate a slow, deliberate exodus over decades, families and communities migrating to smaller settlements, taking with them the knowledge, traditions, and lives that had once defined the metropolis. Others envision a more sudden departure, prompted by crises too severe to endure, leaving behind only artifacts, debris, and the monumental earthworks as memory. And yet, the city's influence did not entirely disappear. Smaller mound sites echo its layout, rituals, and art styles, suggesting that fragments of Cahokia's culture dispersed across the region, integrating into other communities. But those who stayed behind, if any left, no definitive written record, no clues in language, no guiding legends. The great city became a ghost, its purpose and fate a puzzle for generations of researchers. Standing on Monk's Mound today, looking out over the flat Illinois floodplain, one can almost feel the echoes of the vanished city, the clatter of workshops, the chatter of markets, the solemnity of ceremonies long silenced. The silence itself is a mystery, a challenge to our understanding of human resilience and fragility. How could a society so advanced, so connected, and so organized simply disappear? And if they vanished, where did they go? And what secrets did they take with them into the shadows of history? The search for answers now leads us to another, equally enigmatic site nearby, where stone replaces soil and mysteries of purpose defy explanation. Far south in Illinois, hidden among dense forests and jagged sandstone cliffs, stands a structure that seems to defy explanation. Giant city stone fort, unlike Cahokia's orderly mounds and timber circles. This site is raw, rugged, and imposing, a labyrinth of massive sandstone blocks stacked without mortar, winding across ridges and valleys for nearly a mile. Imagine walking along these walls, each stone carefully shaped and positioned, some towering above your head, others forming natural alcoves and hidden passageways, all designed with an eye for precision and stability that modern engineers still marvel at. At first glance, one might assume it was built for defense, but a closer look reveals anomalies that challenge that notion. Sections of the wall are barely waist high, gaps wide enough for wagons or even a crowd of people to pass through. And there are no bastions or fortifications typical of military constructions. Some researchers suggest that giant city stone fort was not defensive at all, but ceremonial, a sacred space where different tribes or communities gathered for rituals, celebrations, or political gatherings. The site's layout incorporates natural rock formations into its design, enhancing caves, spires, and ledges to create outdoor rooms that may have been spaces for teaching, meditation, or observation. Petroglyphs carved into stones hint at symbolic meanings lost to time, while fire pits and circles suggest that ceremonial fires burned here for generations. Others propose an astronomical connection, noting that certain walls and gaps align with solar and lunar events, casting long shadows during solstices, or framing the horizon at specific times of the year. The construction itself raises more questions than answers. How did the builders quarry and transport enormous sandstone blocks over rough terrain without wheels, draft animals, or modern tools? How did they plan such a complex layout that blends natural and artificial elements so seamlessly? Local Native American oral traditions speak of sacred stone cities, locations where spirits gathered or powerful ceremonies occurred, hinting that giant city stone fort was more than a utilitarian structure. Yet, despite these theories, no definitive evidence explains why it was built, who built it, or how it functioned within the wider context of Mississippian culture. Walking along its walls today, you can feel the weight of its mystery, the deliberate effort of human hands, the intimate knowledge of the land, and the purpose that has been lost over centuries. And just when you think you understand its size and scale, surveys reveal underground chambers and buried structures, hinting that what we see above ground may only be a fraction of its true complexity, leaving us to wonder what secrets remain hidden beneath the stones. Journeying further along the Ohio River, we arrive at Kincaid Mounds, a site that once pulsed with political and ceremonial power rivaling Cahokia itself, spread across more than 100 acres. Kincaid is a sprawling complex of at least 11 major mounds, each rising like a deliberate statement of authority and influence over the surrounding floodplain. At its peak, this site was far more than a village. It functioned as a regional capital, a hub where local chiefs, important families, and traders converged to make decisions that rippled across hundreds of miles of river valleys. The largest mound soars nearly 40 feet above the landscape, a monumental testament to labor, organization, and human ambition. Each basket of earth carried painstakingly by hand over generations. Unlike Cahokia's bustling neighborhoods, Kincaid's mounds seem designed for controlled access, elite gatherings, and ceremonial display, emphasizing political theater as much as communal function. Excavations have uncovered residential zones for the ruling elite, specialized craft production areas, and what appear to be administrative spaces, complete with counting stones, marked pottery, and other artifacts suggesting record-keeping or resource management. Trade evidence is equally striking: marine shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and exotic stones from Arkansas reveal a network of commerce, diplomacy, and cultural exchange extending far beyond southern Illinois. The design of plazas and flat ceremonial areas hints at meticulously choreographed gatherings where audiences were managed, messages conveyed, and authority reinforced through performance and ritual. Yet, despite this sophistication, Kincaid's story ends in the same mystery that haunts Cahokia. By the 13th and 14th centuries, the site was gradually depopulated, abandoned for reasons we can only speculate on. Climate stress, political upheaval, disease, or economic collapse could all have played a part, but no definitive cause has been identified. Some suggest rivalry or alliance dynamics with Cahokia itself may have influenced its fate. Were these sites collaborators, competitors, or part of a larger, complex political network that shifted over time? Standing on the terraces today, you feel both the scale of human ambition and the fragility of civilizations. The mounds rise like silent witnesses to a society that mastered trade, governance, and ceremony, only to vanish without a trace, leaving behind questions that still puzzle archaeologists. Kincaid Mounds reminds us that even in ancient America, power was measured not just in wealth or size, but in knowledge, organization, and influence. And yet, even the mightiest centers can disappear, swallowed by time and mystery. About 40 miles southeast of Cahokia, rising like a sentinel from the Illinois prairie, stands Emerald Mound, a structure that seems to whisper secrets across centuries. Unlike the sprawling urbanism of Cahokia or the political precision of Kincaid, Emerald presents a more focused, enigmatic purpose. The mound rises nearly 30 feet above the floodplain, its base sprawling across several acres, yet it feels intentional, deliberate, as though designed for a select few rather than the masses. Archaeological evidence suggests a substantial surrounding village, housing perhaps hundreds of families, but the layout diverges from Cahokia's grid-like organization, hinting at a different social structure, one that may have been more egalitarian in some areas and rigidly hierarchical in others. Pottery and artifacts tell a story of cultural connection and independence. Some styles clearly derive from Cahokian traditions, showing shared technology and aesthetic influence, while others are unique, suggesting local innovation or specialized ceremonial practices. Trade items: copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast flowed through Emerald just as they did through Cahokia, but the patterns differ, indicating distinct priorities or relationships within the regional network. Timing adds to the puzzle. Parts of Emerald appear to predate Cahokia's peak, suggesting the site may have originally been independent before later coming under Cahokia's sphere of influence. Excavations reveal offerings, fire hearths, and artifact arrangements not found at Cahokia, hinting at rituals or practices unique to this location. Ground-penetrating radar has uncovered multiple construction phases beneath the visible mound, implying a long history of adaptation, use, and perhaps even cultural transition. Scholars speculate on Emerald's role. Was it a ceremonial hub for communities across southern Illinois, a training ground for priests or leaders, or a repository of sacred knowledge too important or dangerous to remain at Cahokia itself? Some suggest strategic political planning, a network of allied or subordinate sites designed to extend influence, manage resources, or oversee trade routes. And yet, like many Mississippian centers, Emerald eventually fell silent. Its purpose, connections, and secrets remain obscured beneath layers of earth and time. Walking across the mound today, you sense both its intimate scale and its connection to the broader Mississippian world, a reminder that even in the ancient Midwest, complex societies thrived, cooperated, competed, and left traces that challenge our understanding. The mystery of Emerald Mound lingers, a subtle whisper that hints at systems of knowledge and power far more sophisticated than we can fully grasp. As we move from one mystery to the next, we confront an idea that continues to astonish researchers: the uncanny alignment of Cahokia's mounds and surrounding sites with celestial phenomena. Standing atop Monk's Mound or Emerald, The flat expanses and elevated ridges are not random. They often correspond to equinoxes or lunar cycles, suggesting the Mississippians were not merely builders of Earth, but observers of the heavens. Imagine the precision required, without telescopes, written records, or advanced mathematics. They positioned massive mounds and plazas to interact with sunlight at exact moments of the year. During the summer solstice, the rising sun casts long shadows along specific axes, illuminating sacred spaces in ways that would have been impossible to achieve without careful observation across decades. Some researchers suggest these alignments were practical, guiding agricultural cycles and ceremonial calendars. Others propose that they held spiritual or political significance, reinforcing the authority of leaders who understood the rhythms of nature and sky. The connections extend beyond Cahokia. Satellite sites like Emerald Mound and Kincaid Mounds also show partial astronomical alignment, hinting at a coordinated regional system of observation and ritual. This raises questions about knowledge transmission. How was this information passed from one generation to the next without written language? Were the alignments meant to communicate with distant sites, forming a network of cosmic observatories across Illinois? And yet, despite these sophisticated arrangements, much remains speculative. The precise methods, motivations, and cultural meanings behind the alignments are lost, leaving only evidence of remarkable intent. Standing in these spaces today, one can feel the subtle power of this knowledge, the connection between earth and sky, human and cosmos, ritual and observation. The alignments whisper of a civilization that measured more than land. They measured time, seasons, and perhaps even destiny. The mystery deepens as we consider that even today, we cannot fully replicate these placements with the same accuracy, prompting wonder and awe. Were the Mississippians attempting to commune with the heavens, assert authority, or simply mark the passage of time in an elegant and enduring form? And as we ponder their precision, the question remains, what other secrets lie buried beneath the soil, waiting to reveal a civilization that understood the stars long before modern science arrived? Beneath the visible mounds of Cahokia, Kincaid, and Emerald lies a hidden world that challenges our understanding of these ancient sites. Subterranean chambers, tunnels, and buried structures that have only recently begun to reveal themselves through ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation. Imagine walking across a flat, grassy mound and knowing that just beneath your feet lie cavities and remnants of wooden structures that have decayed over centuries, leaving only ghostly impressions in the earth. Some of these underground features appear to be storage areas, ceremonial chambers, or even foundations of buildings whose purpose is entirely mysterious. The precision of some constructions suggests more than mere functional use. Certain pits and post arrangements align with cardinal directions, celestial events, or other nearby mounds, implying an awareness of cosmic patterns even below ground. Archaeologists speculate that these chambers could have held sacred artifacts, offerings, or materials too valuable or dangerous to display above ground, a secret repository of spiritual or political significance. Others suggest practical explanations, storage of food, water management, or even protective measures, but the elaborate nature of some underground structures hints at symbolic or ceremonial importance that we may never fully decode. Some sites show multiple layers of construction, where earlier chambers were intentionally buried beneath newer mounds, preserving memory, authority, or ritual significance across generations. The act of building upward while burying earlier work, suggests a culture deeply attuned to time, cycles, and continuity, a civilization that honored its past even as it reshaped the landscape. Standing over these sites today, one can almost feel the weight of what lies hidden, the echoes of footsteps that will never be heard. The structures that once supported ceremonies or daily life, and the knowledge that much of Cahokia's secrets remain inaccessible, invisible to the naked eye. What were the original purposes of these chambers, and what truths might they hold about the Mississippian people's beliefs, governance, or daily life? Each excavation reveals more questions than answers, deepening the sense that beneath the mounds is not just earth, but a labyrinth of history, waiting for those who can decipher its silent codes. And as we ponder these hidden layers, we are reminded that the surface is only part of the story. The deeper we probe, the more elusive the past becomes, drawing us further into a mystery that has persisted for centuries. One of the most astonishing aspects of the Mississippian world is not just their monumental architecture, but the vast networks of trade and influence that connected these communities across hundreds of miles. Walking through Cahokia, Kincaid, or Emerald Mound, it's easy to marvel at the engineering, but the artifacts tell an equally compelling story of connectivity and sophistication. Shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, mica from the Appalachian region, and stone from distant quarries in Arkansas and Missouri all converge here, revealing a system of exchange that rivals anything in pre-Columbian North America. These materials weren't merely commodities. They were symbols of status, tools of diplomacy, and markers of cultural identity, flowing along rivers like arteries carrying the lifeblood of civilization. Some researchers believe that trade routes functioned not only economically but politically, binding disparate communities into alliances, networks of obligation, and spheres of influence that allowed for coordinated ceremonial events, shared technological innovations, and the dissemination of religious or ideological practices. Artifacts show that elite residences held rare items, reinforcing social hierarchy, while more common goods circulated among broader populations, suggesting an intricate balance between central authority and local autonomy. The scale of this network implies remarkable planning, communication, and knowledge of geography. Even without written language or wheeled transport, boats, rafts, and footpaths along rivers likely formed the backbone of this system. Yet the distances covered and the diversity of materials suggest a level of organization that continues to challenge archaeologists. Some scholars speculate that trade was also a conduit for knowledge, ideas, and ceremonial practices, allowing sites like Kincaid or Emerald to mirror Cahokia in technological sophistication, urban planning, and spiritual observances. And yet, despite the apparent integration of these networks, each site maintained its own identity and innovations, a delicate balance between cooperation and autonomy that hints at political sophistication previously unrecognized in pre-Columbian North America. Walking along the rivers and floodplains today, you can almost sense the movement of people, goods, and ideas. The rhythm of a civilization bound together not just by proximity, but by complex relationships that remain partially hidden beneath the layers of soil. How did these societies manage to coordinate so much over such distances? What systems of authority and communication allowed for such cohesion? And what happened to these networks when the great centers fell silent, leaving only traces that continue to mystify us centuries later? As we move from the practical to the profound, we encounter the spiritual and artistic world of the Mississippians, a realm that offers tantalizing glimpses into their beliefs, values, and cosmology. Across Cahokia, Kincaid, and Emerald, artisans shaped clay, carved stone, and etched symbols into wood, creating objects that were functional, ceremonial, and deeply symbolic all at once. Pottery vessels, often decorated with intricate patterns, reveal more than aesthetic skill. They speak of a worldview where nature, ancestors, and the cosmos were intertwined. Animal motifs, stylized humans, and geometric designs are found across multiple sites, suggesting shared religious or cultural symbols, yet local variations hint at unique traditions or interpretations. Some researchers believe that these objects were not merely decorative, but encoded with knowledge, cosmic cycles, spiritual teachings, or social rules passed from one generation to the next without written language. Petroglyphs and carved stone tablets, though rare, suggest an effort to communicate ideas across space and time, perhaps marking sacred locations, recording ceremonial events, or reinforcing authority. Fire pits, ceremonial plazas, and ritual deposits further reinforce the notion of a society deeply attuned to spiritual practices, where the act of creating art was inseparable from acts of worship, remembrance, or governance. Imagine standing in one of these spaces, the lingering smell of fire, the quiet hum of wind across the mounds, the shadows cast by rising or setting sun over carved symbol's edge, detail intentionally designed to evoke awe, reflection, or connection with the unseen. And yet, much of this world remains indecipherable. We cannot know the full meaning behind a carved bird, a patterned pot, or a stone circle only infer, speculate, and marvel at the intent and complexity behind these creations. What messages were the Mississippians sending to their descendants, their neighbors, or the cosmos itself? How did art, symbolism, and spirituality shape governance, social cohesion, and daily life? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, when these great centers fell silent, did these messages vanish with them, or are they waiting in plain sight, hidden in the earth and artifacts, to be rediscovered by those who dare to look closely enough? The echoes of their spiritual and artistic life linger, a whisper across centuries that reminds us civilization is measured not just in walls and trade, but in the invisible threads of meaning, belief, and expression that survive the passage of time. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through Illinois' ancient mysteries, we are left with perhaps the most haunting question of all. Why did these remarkable civilizations vanish? Cahokia, Kincaid, Emerald Mound, and countless other Mississippian sites rose to astonishing heights, demonstrating engineering brilliance, political sophistication, agricultural mastery, and deep spiritual insight. And yet, within centuries, the mounds fell silent, the plazas emptied, and the trade networks dissolved. Some researchers suggest environmental factors, climate change, fluctuating river levels, soil depletion, or prolonged droughts that undermined agriculture and forced communities to relocate. Others point to disease, possibly introduced through interregional contact, that decimated populations already stressed by resource management challenges. Political upheaval may have also played a role. Evidence of conflict, shifting alliances, and social stratification hints at internal pressures that could destabilize even the most organized society. There is no single answer, and perhaps the truth lies in a complex combination of factors, a cascade of crises that overwhelmed human ingenuity. Yet the disappearance is not merely a story of collapse. It is a story of disappearance without trace. Unlike many civilizations, the Mississippians left no written records, no continuous oral histories that clearly document their fate. They vanished, leaving only the earthworks, artifacts, and echoes of human activity for us to interpret. This absence fuels the allure, the mystery, and the unease that surrounds these sites. Standing today on a silent mound or walking among the ruins of a long-abandoned plaza, one senses a profound absence, a void filled with unanswered questions. Who were these people in their fullest sense? What drove their innovation, and why did they leave everything behind? And perhaps most unsettling of all, it forces us to confront the fragility of human achievement, how even the most advanced societies can be erased by forces both natural and human. As we leave Illinois' ancient landscapes behind, the mounds, timber circles, and stone structures remain, silent witnesses to a vanished world, challenging us to piece together stories that science can only hint at and reminding us that some mysteries may never be fully solved. The past refuses to be buried completely, and in that refusal lies the enduring power and fascination of these ancient North American civilizations.